Brad Holmes, the general manager of the Detroit Lions, has just one true blemish on his GMing career. That blemish comes all the way back in his very first draft class back in the 2020 NFL Draft. And that, of course, was his first ever second round selection in Washington defensive tackle Levi Onwuzurike. Now, Onwuzurike coming out of Washington was a really good prospect. He had great pass rushing upside. He was one of the best interior defensive linemen in the class from a talent perspective, but he fell through the NFL draft and fell out of the first round largely due to his medical concerns that dated back all the way to high school. Brad Holmes decided that, hey, the medical concerns weren't a big enough issue and that they were going to select him with the 42nd pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. Now, this draft class is synonymous with talent, right? Penei Sewell, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Aleem McNeil, Ifeatu Melifonwu, and Derek Barnes all came out of this 2020 class. Some of the foundational pieces to rebuilding the Detroit Lions into what they are today. But a lot of people forget that Levi Onwuzurike was the second selection in that class, that he was supposed to be the guy to be the interior pass rusher, and that he was supposed to be one of those foundational pieces. Now, Levi has struggled a lot with injuries throughout his NFL career, starting all the way back from his rookie season, keeping him out of his sophomore season, and really preventing him from reaching his ceiling up to this point. However, after a number of surgeries, a number of years rehabbing, and finally getting an opportunity throughout training camp, Levi Onwuzurike has been incredible through the first 2 weeks of the NFL season. And if he keeps it up this year, he's not only going to get a second contract with the Detroit Lions, but could be added to that list of foundational pieces for the Detroit Lions' future. Now, taking a look at Levi's early NFL career, he's played 28 games through 4 years of his NFL career, right? 16 games as a rookie, 0 games as a second year player, as that back injury really kept him out the entire season. 10 games last year, and of course, 2 games to start the 2024 campaign. He's been very limited throughout his NFL career. Even as a rookie playing in every game, his snap count was really low, really didn't have that much of an impact. Of course, the second year, he came into training camp with a lot of expectation, a little bit of hype, and before the NFL season rolled around, he was already placed on season-ending injury reserve. Last season, he started the season pretty healthy, went out against the Chiefs and looked pretty good, went out against Seattle and looked pretty good, but then, of course, ended up on injury reserves yet again for the majority of the middle portions of the season, returned for the last couple of weeks as well as a playoff run where he looked really good. He was graded as the #1 defensive tackle in pass rush win rate. He was graded very highly by Pro Football Focus and a lot of other analysts that said, hey, this could really be something. This is a player that, when healthy and coming off of that injury, is playing really well, playing at a super high level and doing great things for the Detroit Lions defensive line next to Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson. Now, Levi Onwuzurike, through his 28 games, has totaled 40 tackles for the Detroit Lions, 2 sacks, 3 tackles for loss, 2 passes defended, and 3 quarterback hits. He was, of course, as I mentioned, the second round selection of the 2020 class, and he largely gets overshadowed by the All Pros, by the Pro Bowlers, by the big contracts that have already been brought out, right? Because Penei Sewell was in that draft class, and St. Brown was in that draft class, and Aleem McNeil and Derek Barnes and even Ifeatu Melifonwu were all in that class. So Levi, for everything that he's been able to accomplish in his NFL career, kind of gets forgotten about, kind of gets pushed to the wayside because of all of the success that these other 4 players have had. But that's not to say that Levi wasn't deserving of that second round pick. As a prospect coming out of Washington, he was fast. He was explosive. He had good hands. He had good feet. He was a good pass rusher. And he looked like a prototypical NFL 3 technique defensive lineman. He was going to get after the quarterback. He was going to be the interior pressure guy. And if it wasn't for the injuries, I think he could have been that much earlier in his NFL career. There were flashes as a rookie. There were flashes as a third-year player. As I said, in particular, at the end of the 2023 season, he was really really good for the Detroit Lions. And those are things, those are flashes that could have turned into tendencies had he been healthy throughout the early portions of his career. Now, with that being said, Levi Onwuzurike in particular had really bad back injuries, right? Dating all the way back to high school, they hurt him throughout his time at Washington. They hurt him throughout his time in the NFL. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was still suffering through them a little bit in the 2024 season. But to put into perspective just how much time and just how long this injury has affected him, it started in high school, right? He missed games at Washington because of this back injury, and it was a massive reason as to why he fell to the second round. It cost him millions of dollars in great draft positioning because of the injuries that he sustained. It hurt him in year one. He only played about a 38% of the defensive snaps in his rookie season, did walk away with a sack on Thanksgiving, but other than that, was really quiet as a rookie. Just a couple tackles for loss and maybe one quarterback hit outside of that. It ended his 2022 campaign before it even really got started. And that's after showing flashes at training camp, after showing flashes at OTAs and mini camp, and after reporters and a lot of people came out and said Levi could really be something this year. And then it came out and he started year three, and a lot of people were very excited. And then by week four, he was back on injury reserve. And I think a lot of people kind of forgot about him. Even coming off of injury reserve, nobody really talked about Levi. Nobody talked about his return. Nobody talked about what role he would play. Nobody talked about really anything that he was going to do as he returned. And as I said, when he did return, he was one of the best interior defensive linemen in football, right? His pass rushing grade was up there. His pressure rate was up there. He had a sack against, I believe, the Minnesota Vikings in week 17. That was incredibly impressive. He was putting pressure on the quarterback, and for a late January, late December addition to this football team, he was massive for the Detroit Lions in their playoff push, in their playoff run, and in their success from a season ago. And now we're finally starting to put it all together. Levi's finally starting to show out and show what he can do. As going into camp, there was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of hype. He was taking first team reps. He did not play any snaps during the preseason. He was getting a lot of praise from the coaching staff, from Campbell, from Glenn, from other players on that defensive line. And it really seemed like it was all coming together. Now, this yet again was looked over by the Detroit Lions fans because, of course, Jameson Williams was having that breakout campaign. Jameson Williams was the talk of the town, and there was a lot of other defensive playmakers that people wanted to hear about, right? Carlton Davis and Brian Branch and Terrion Arnold and Marcus Davenport and Aiden Hutchinson were all players that got the media spotlight over somebody like Levi Onwuzurike, but that didn't stop Levi Onwuzurike from being really good in the background of training camp, right? Putting up first team reps, putting up really good numbers, not having to play throughout the preseason, which is really truly the most telling thing a player can do. And it's finally all starting to come together. In 2024, Levi Onwuzurike has not only played both games for the Detroit Lions, but has made his first two career starts with the Detroit Lions next to Aleem McNeil. He's played 68% of defensive snaps, partially due to the absence and injury recovery of DJ Reader, but also largely due to the fact that he has just simply earned those reps. He has outplayed the other interior defensive linemen, and through two games so far has 6 tackles, 3 quarterback hits, 4 pressures, and a half a sack through both games. He had a half a sack paired with Marcus Davenport in week 1 against Matthew Stafford, and he had a half a sack paired with Aiden Hutchinson last week against Baker Mayfield. He's been an incredible and actually pretty consistent interior rushing threat in that defensive line rotation. He's been really solid for what the Detroit Lions have wanted him to be. Just to take a look at a couple of other statistics that I have written down, he is 6th in the NFL in defensive pressures from a defensive tackle. He is top 5 in pass rush win rate for interior defensive tackles. And of course, the most telling statistic is that he is finally healthy enough to play over half of the defensive snaps on the line. He's finally healthy enough to make a significant contribution to this team. And even though it might be too late for Levi Onwuzurike to ever truly get the recognition he deserves, even if it's too late for Levi Onwuzurike to be kind of lumped in with that 2020 class that was so good and had all pros and had pro bowlers and had all these massive contracts, Levi Onwuzurike is finally coming into his own. He's finally becoming the NFL player that Brad Holmes saw throughout the draft. The Lions coaching staff has supported for the last 3 years on injury reserve. And all of that time and all of that commitment is finally starting to pay off. So, with all of that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know your opinions of Levi Onwuzurike down in the comments below. The breakout player that nobody was paying attention to. Levi has been great throughout the 2 weeks. I'm excited to see what he's able to do throughout the rest of the NFL season and whether or not he's able to get that second contract from Brad Holmes. I'd be curious to see how he plays out throughout the season. With all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Of course, let me know down in the comments below your opinions of Levi's first 2 weeks, what your expectations are for the rest of the season. And while you're down in the comments section, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification so you never miss a Lions upload. We do Lions uploads several times a week, talking about players, talking about the teams, talking about the form. So if you like the content, you love the Lions, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell. But with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.